So in this video, we're going to give you an overview on how to control your new solar system. Now obviously on the day of install, it's going to be pretty hectic because you're going to have the team there installing the panels on the roof, they're going to be doing the electrics and making the final connections. Now at the end of that day, the team will come to you and they will hand over the system. So they'll give you a quick overview on how to activate it, how to shut it down, and they'll also invite you to access the apps. And the purpose of this video is to give you a thorough, in-depth overview on how you can control the system, how to monitor and run reports, and also how to discharge energy to the grid. So stay tuned, we'll take you through the various steps, and if you ever need to revisit this video, you can always come back to it, or if you want to speak to one of the team, you can contact us at the office. So as we mentioned previously, once your system has been activated, the installers will invite you to join the various apps to use and control your system. Now for your solar PV, this is going to be something called Enphase Enlighten, and you can download this app off the Google Store, you can download it off the iOS Store, depending on the phone you have, there will be a version of Enphase Enlighten's app in there. You need to download it and create an account. Once you've created the account, that will then give you full access to your system, but this will only be available to you once the installer has sent the invite. So if you download it before the install, obviously you can't view your system because it's not been installed yet, but as soon as this system is installed and live, you'll get that invite and that'll give you full access to the actual PV system. Now you don't have to access Enphase from a smartphone, you can also do it from a web app. And again, once your system's live, your credentials will then link to your home and you can view the system there. So the first place we're going to start is with the home sort of dashboard on the online app. So once you log in, you'll be presented with this first screen, which is here. So it's going to give you an overview of your system. And we're going to run through the various components of it now. So this is the first screen that you're going to see when you go onto the web portal. And to run over the various elements that start at the top left. So the first thing you're going to get here is a status update. Now as soon as your system goes in for the first 24 to 48 hours, what you may find is you have an error showing here, and that's just because the system's going through some self-calibration. Beyond 48 hours, your system should go to normal. If it doesn't, we are monitoring it in the background. We'll keep an eye on it, and if we think there's anything wrong, we'll get it sorted. But up here, you can say this system in this demo environment is a normal system. You've got today's date, and you've also got showing there that you've got a Wi-Fi connection. This section here, 0.4 kilowatt, is the latest power that the system is producing. So this on Enphase, it updates every 15 minutes. So right now what it's saying is the latest update it got, the system was producing 400 watts, 0.4 kilowatts. And it's also saying the peak power for today in this system was 4.2 kilowatts. As you move down, you get into this sort of a layout here, which gives you an overview of the system. So this is a snapshot for today. If you wanted to view different days, you can do that in a second. You can change the pointer when you view the data. But today we've got imported, we've taken 13.5 kilowatt hours from the grid. We've produced 12.9 kilowatt hours of PV, and the home today has consumed 26.1 kilowatt hours, and we've exported to the grid not much at all, 600 watts. Now, what's important to note here is if you've got a battery connected to your system, then your consumption figure is going to look high. And the reason it's going to look high here on Enphase is Enphase can't see third-party batteries, but batteries can see Enphase. So what this means is when energy starts to go out to the grid, the battery will view that, the battery will take it, but Enphase will view that as consumption. So if you've got a battery connected to your system that's not an Enphase battery, don't be concerned if you start to see really high consumption figures. It's not that you've started using loads more energy, it's the energy that you produced that was going to be exported has been recovered by the battery and has been stored for later on. On the top right hand side, you've got your grid dependent. So again, this isn't always going to be totally accurate if you've got a third party battery, because this is assuming that the property today has consumed 26.1 kilowatt hours. We know this property has a battery and therefore a lot of that energy has gone into that system. You've also got an overview of your environmental impact, so how many kilowatts of energy you've saved, what your CO2 reduction was, and it will show you your net imported position. So this will generally be correct, which is this property today as net imported 12.9 kilowatt hours. Now, that's a brief overview, and if you don't have a battery attached to your system, then I would always use Enphase as your go-to for your system overview and performance. And when you've not got a battery, these figures are going to be a lot more accurate. If you've got a battery, then you're always going to use the battery app to monitor the performance of your system, because the battery can see the home, it can see the battery, and it can see the PV. What is useful on Enphase is getting an overview for your array's performance. So at the top here, if you click array, you can start to see what each individual panel has produced. So you can see everyone will be slightly differently. That's because different panels perform differently. They may have partial shading. They may just be out of the factory, a higher or lower output. But what the benefit of the Enphase system is that no two panels are linked, and therefore they can individually perform, and you can monitor that real time in this software. On the right hand side, you can see your total produced power for today and the lifetime power for the system, and you can scroll through different dates, and you can view what your system was doing during different periods on different days. And finally, you've got energy. So this section here is going to be, again, an overview of your system performance. And again, if you've not got a battery that's not Enphase, it's going to be a lot more accurate. And click on here now. So you've got total energy, updated 5 minutes ago. And this is basically a repeat of the previous screen that we saw. However, on this screen here, we can now start to take a look at weeks or months. So if you want to know how much energy you've exported to the grid, then you can click month up here for September, for August, whenever it was, and it will show you. So in this instance, we've exported 71.2 kilowatt hours to the grid. We've produced 421, we imported 74.7, and our net imported figure for the whole month, we only actually net bought 3.5 kilowatt hours of energy. So that is your Enphase overview of the app. Like I said before, if you've got a battery that isn't Enphase, then realistically you're only ever going to use this software just to check the individual performance of your different panels, because if you've got the battery, it's going to be a lot more accurate for what's actually going on in your home. So the next video now, we're going to dive into the Alpha ESS battery, and that'll give us a much more overviewed position of our system, and it'll be a lot more accurate for our real-time production and consumption. So that was our Enphase overview. Now what we're going to take a look at is the Alpha ESS app. So the Alpha ESS app is exactly the same as the Enphase one. You're going to go to the Play Store, you're going to go to the App Store, download it, and then what the installer will do is invite you to that ecosystem, and then you can view your own battery's performance. Now, once you've downloaded the app, you don't have to use the actual smartphone app to do this. You can use the web version of the software. However, I find personally that the smart version or the app version of this product is much easier to use, and it's really easy to navigate all the settings. So once you've downloaded the app, and we've registered your battery to your username, you'll be presented with this screen. Now, depending on the phone that you've got, the screen is always going to be slightly different. This is an iOS device. However, on Android, the functions and the layout is pretty similar, but if you don't recognize the screen sort of inch by inch on as it is now, don't worry, all the functions are there. They're maybe just under a different button. But the first screen you see is an overview of your system, and the difference with Alpha compared to Enphase is Alpha is real time. So when we say real time, it updates about every 30 seconds. So the first thing to watch out for on this screen, and to understand it rather, is the top right hand side. You've got your current PV power. So this property right now is doing 495 watts. You've got the status of your battery. When you see SOC, SOC, that means state of charge. This battery is 100% charged. It's actually just charging a little bit more now. When you see 100%, it could be 99.8. So if you see 100 and see it charging, don't worry, it is still charging. So the next section you've got here, if you fill out how much your investment was, so how much your solar system cost, and also fill in what your export tariff is, then the Alpha ES app will give a constant updated live feed on your total income and your return on your investment. And the bottom two tabs down here are shortcuts to the real-time power and statistics. So you can click them and they'll flip you through to the screens, but we're going to come back to those screens shortly. At the bottom here, you've got function, and again, on a different device, this button may be in a different place. But if you're interested in charging your battery from the grid, so if you're on a low rate tariff like Octopus Flux, which gives you an option to charge your battery at cheap at night, then to do that, it's super simple with Alpha ESS. Click into the charge and discharge settings tab, click charge from grid, and click the period that you want to charge the battery from and when you want to charge it to. Once you've done that, you'll then need to select when you want the charging to stop. So if you only want your battery to charge at 50%, then you can write 50% in there. If you want it to go to 100%, you can have full control over the settings in this device. The next one down is aux settings, or auxiliary settings rather, and this is when you've got a backup system installed on your battery. It's pretty rare that you do have that, but if you do have that enabled, you'll want to turn it on here. You've got some other settings to scroll through. I wouldn't touch any of the other settings other than the electricity pricing and the charge and discharge of your battery, because you may cause the system to go in fault. And you've got some information about you on the far right hand screen. Now going back to our overview, if you swipe right on the screen, you're now going to get a real-time view of what's actually going on with your solar PV system. So right now with this particular property, the PV is doing 422 watt. The battery's charging at 42 watts. So what you'll see with a battery as well, just something else to note, is when your battery is very low, so 5 to 10% or between 90 and 100%, the rate of charge will slow down and the rate of discharge will slow down. And that's there to protect the battery. It's much like when you charge your smart device at home, between 20 and 80%, the charge is rapid, and that last sort of 10% either side, it does slow down. That's going to be the same with your home PV battery. What you can see also as well now is your load. So right now in this property, the load is 423 watts. And just to give you an overview about how this system works, the PV will always, in the first instance, supplement the load. So right now we've got 414 watt. The load's 417, so the PV is doing the bulk of the load and it's just being topped up from the grid in this position. Moving down, you've got an overview of what your system has done today. So today we've done 10.8 kilowatt hours of PV generation. We haven't consumed anything from the grid. It's a really good day for this client. Feed-in. So when you see the word feed in, you may think that's energy pulled in from the grid, but it's not. When Alpha says feed in, Alpha means energy sent to the grid. So this client has exported 1.2 kilowatt hours of the system. And total consumption today is 9.6 kilowatt hours. That means the load over the day so far, this property's consumed 9.6 kilowatt hours. And you've got some eco sort of standout points at the bottom here. So we've had a CO2 reduction of 9.3 kgs. And of course, apparently we've planted 1.85 trees. I don't know what that looks like, but that's what the system's saying. If we scroll right one more time, again, you start to get some more statistics. And this is where you can start to get reports about the year, the day, and your self-sufficiency. And this one here, the next one, is a real-time graph. So this is really interesting. And you can separate out what the system's doing by clicking on the various buttons. So this is the battery and discharge curve of this property. We can look at PV only. You've got your load throughout the day, pretty static in this home. Feed into the grid. So these are the moments when the battery was sent into the grid, and grid consumption. Obviously this property today basically had no grid consumption. Just something else to note as well on this home screen here is you've got self-consumption and self-sufficiency. Well, what do they mean? Well, self-sufficiency means how much you're depending on the grid. This property today is 100% self-sufficient. They've not had to use anything from the grid. That's pretty rare, but it's obviously a really good day for this client. However, the self-consumption figure is lower, and you would ask yourself, why is that? Well, self-consumption means how much of the energy produced or stored in your battery did you consume It's almost impossible to consume 100% of it, because when your battery's full, if your PV's producing and your load isn't high enough, then you're always going to export to the grid, and therefore your self-consumption figure in this particular instance is 88.9%. Now, what's important to know about these figures is don't get disheartened if you have a day when your self-sufficiency is 30 or 40% because you've got really big loads and the PV hasn't been generating. You need to look at these instances over a month to get a real picture on how your system is performing. And something else that comes up quite a lot with the Alpha app and what clients, early doors when you get your PV system, you're going to be fastidious, you're going to be watching this app all the time, and you'll see a spike and think, what's going on? Why am I pulling from the grid? Just to give you some reassurance on that, if you ever see a load in your property that's lower than the PV and lower than the battery can supply, but you're pulling from the grid, don't get too concerned about that. The Alpha app updates every 30 seconds, and sometimes what happens is if you get a change in load in your property, what the system will do is look to see if that load is going to be sustained, because if you jump here from 434 watts to 1,000 watts and the battery immediately reacted and dumped an extra 600 watts into the property, it could blow something up if that load was only a blip. So what the system's going to do is watch a change in load. If it sees that that change in load is it's going to last more than a few seconds, then the battery will start to supplement the load and the PV will start to supplement it. But there's always going to be moments, it's called leakage, when there's a delay from a big load changing and the system reacting. It's just to protect the appliances in your property, but also protect the battery, because what we don't want the battery doing is constantly spiking and dropping in energy. Now, if you've got any questions on this system and you want to know how to better control your battery, you can always contact us at the office and we're more than happy to help. The best advice I can give to get the most out of your system is don't get too hung up on the real-time display about what's going on, because you'll spot things and you'll get wound up about it. The best thing to do is to take a look at the whole day as a full picture and ignore any little spikes. What's also worth considering is in the winter months, if your PV generation is lower than it is in the summer months and your battery isn't fully charging, you might want to take a look at your tariff and consider charging from the grid. You need to do the maths behind that. If you've got any questions or you want some advice on that, again, you can contact us at the office and we'll be more than happy to help. So I hope that's been a really interesting video in giving you an overview about how you're going to control your new PV and battery system. Now, if you've got any further questions, if you're unsure on the app, you can ask the installer on the day, or if it's the after event and you're still not sure about how to control your system, you want to contact us, then drop us an email at solar@heatable.co.uk and one of the experts will be happy to give you a call back. There's also on Enphase, they have a community. So within your Enphase app, you've got an option to join the Enphase community, and it's really helpful bunch of people. They're all Enphase homeowners. There's some installers in there, and there's actually representatives from Enphase too. So if you want to post a question, they're usually pretty quick at coming back. Now, good luck with your solar install. We'll be obviously monitoring the system once it's gone live. And that's a final note from me just before we end this video, is we have access to your system in terms of the overall health and monitoring. So if you do get any errors or you get any faults, don't worry, we're aware of it and we're already working on a fix. Most of the time it's just a software update that's going on and we'll push that repair. If we see anything that we're concerned about, we'll be in touch.